Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm excited to join Dr. Joey Faucette on our show today. He's an executive coach, culture architect, host of the Work Positive podcast, and he's an author of 2 best-selling books. Dr. Joey is like a candle, bringing warmth and light in his positive ways. I'm honored to have him on the show as we cover how he lives his life like a movie that he's playing an important role in, and not simply sitting back and watching it go by as a viewer. He covers tips and ideas to learn from adversity as he shares about several vulnerable moments in his life, followed by how to spark more positivity in your life, at work, or wherever you want to have the greatest impact. Enjoy the show. Well, welcome, Dr. Joey, to the Live Your Possible podcast. It's so great to see you. How you doing?
Darren, I am so just ecstatic to be on Live Your Possible. I love the title of your podcast, man. If I were hosting my podcast, which you were on, by the way, I would say, hey, Darren, where'd you get the title? Live Your Possible.
Yeah, and I love yours, Work Positive, right? Work Positive Nation. So I appreciate you joining and sharing your positivity with us today. And, let's start there. Like, what are you passionate about today?
Well, we were talking previously about my 3.5-year-old granddaughter. So I am passionate about her. If you're watching the video, you can see that I'm a certified best pops ever.
Love it.
So her mother
should I call you Dr. Joey or Pops for the rest of the show?
Well, my preferred pronoun is Pops. So if you don't like calling me that, y'all and all y'all work just fine.
That's fantastic.
Obviously, I'm from a little south of the Mason-Dixon line, or as I prefer to call it, the Sweet Tea line. But just passionate about waking up every morning and opportunities. I mean, I've programmed my reticular activating system to trigger just about every morning with that question. What are you excited about today? And boy, that helps me write a beautiful movie for the day, and just imagining those possibilities, and helps me live my possible, Darren.
No, you're spot on. You put those messages into your mind. Guess what happens? You start to connect to it and see it as you're living it out loud.
I recently reread, I really should read it every year, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. And Matt Sherney did a retake on it. So I bought that one recently. That's just a fascinating book, and it grounds me. Again, reminds me of the amazing minds that we have, or as he prefers to call it, the creative success mechanism that we have, and how we can use that to best advantage, really to create not just the best possible life for ourselves, but for those people around us. That's part of my transformation, was from me to we, and I find my great passion is around we.
And do you feel like we can, as you talk about our brains, do you think we could train it, or do you think we can control it to continue to deliver on our purpose? Like you're saying, from me to we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can. The cool thing is I can't capture all of it. In other words, there's still, the mind is a battlefield, right? For many of us. So figuring out ways to captivate our thoughts, or to capture our thoughts, and to use those to the best possible life. Yeah, it's definitely it. But it's like anything else, hitting a golf ball, or my nephew played second base for the Atlanta Braves for 10 years. So I always go to baseball, and that was my sport when I was a kid. Jesse Cole, the owner of the Savannah Bananas, has been on my podcast. And so I'm a baseball nut. They say, whoever they are, say that hitting a 95 mile per hour fastball is the hardest athletic feat. And so, to be able to do that, you have to develop muscle memory. You just don't step up there and immediately see it. You got to swing and miss at a whole bunch of 95 mile per hour fastballs, but it's that repetitive motion, and your brain can establish muscle memory too. And so that you have a cognited response to certain situations. And so rather than react, you're responding in a calculated way.
Yeah, it's like we're slowing our brain down to be able to see that pitch coming in either at us or maybe it's got different spin on the ball, and it's
Yeah.
really being able to kind of slow our thinking down a little bit to respond, as you said.
Slow down to speed up is the way I talk about it. Michael Jordan used to talk about how the game would come to him, and the basket looks big, those kinds of things. So it's that perspective that we bring to our mindset. And I know it sounds woo woo to some people, but it's there's just too much fMRI research even now showing that you can reprogram your reticular activating system. And the crazy thing is, Darren, that your brain really can't tell the difference between what's really real and what's imagined. Now, really real sounds redundant, but your brain interprets it all as real, whatever you're feeding it. Your fear of things that have not happened, your worries of things that might happen, it interprets those as real. So your autonomic responses and reflexes start triggering. Cortisol levels go up, and I don't want to geek out on neuroscience, neuroscientist, but I love learning about the brain. But anyway, it just triggers these automatic responses. Pulse rate increases and things like that. So literally slowing down to speed up is capturing your response to it, and you literally can program that.
Yeah, the fact that we can, and knowing that we can, and that we can believe that, it's amazing. We could become aware, and we could actually care to make some different changes. And I had a guest, Debbie Hampton. She is from the best brain possible, and she has shown in her research exactly what you were saying, right? Our brain is wired in a certain way that it does continue to grow if we feed it the right way.
Absolutely. Ramit Sethi, I have a couple of his courses that I listen to his videos every morning, and he talks about invisible scripts. In fact, I think I Will Teach You to Be Rich is an amazing book, but I really think his great contribution are those invisible scripts. So we oftentimes respond based on previous experiences, but more to the point, our interpretation of them and how we show up with those. And those are just invisible scripts that are written for our reticular activating system, or the movie going on in our brain. And you can definitely edit out certain sections and add in new sections. So
I love the reference to the movie too. You're triggering a thought. I used to have a boss that would say, "Hey, stop watching the movie. Get in the movie." I thought that was pretty insightful.
Yeah, life's not a spectator sport, right? It's you're the star.
You are the star, unless you want to sit here and just watch it go by. And I love your motivation. And I'd love to learn a little bit more too. How did you get from me to we thinking? How'd you transform that way? That's the word that you mentioned there.
Yeah, exhaustion, burnout.
You experienced that?
Yeah. Oh no, I just read about it. Somebody else's story, right? Heck yeah, I lived it. It's I was having a conversation with someone recently, and it was I made the statement, I'm glad I've lived long enough and still have enough life left to have learned a few things that I can enjoy the benefits of now. And so I was a really good dad. We have two daughters. I was a really good dad when they were growing up. I'm an even better pops, because not just because of the release of responsibility for primary parenting, because she's with us 5 days a week in the afternoons. And so we get to interact with her, and we're going through, those wonderful 3-year-old exertion of personality to declare her independence, and she can do things. And so we're seeing that. And every now and again, there's we need to learn emotional governance, so we have opportunities to do that. But man, I'm just much more patient with her. We sit down and talk about things. And when she's just emotionally needing to get herself under control, her mom, I guess because we did it when she was young, helps her to take a minute. So that, that's become a phrase for us. Little girl, would you like to take a minute? And so she'll sometimes take herself to take a minute. She just is at 3.5 is becoming emotionally aware enough to where, I'm not at my best right now. Let me step aside and isolate myself to where I can get my act together. And then she'll come out of she has her room here with her nap bed, by the way. So she comes out of her room here, and she'll yell down to my wife, "Gigi, I'm ready because she's got herself together. So, man, yeah, just those, and I guess that's another way of editing a movie, right? She's learning emotional intelligence even at that young age. So, having experienced burnout, having tried to do it all myself, and realizing not only the effect that was having on me, Darren, but also I'm denying other people the opportunity to live their best life, to live their possible. And man, that does not make me a very good steward of the human experience. And so that's part of my mission in life, is to maximize potential. So I wasn't doing that. And just really getting vulnerable and honest with myself about some insecurities that were driving me to try to prove myself constantly and prove my competence. Part of that is my personality type. So thank you, Myers-Briggs, for helping me understand that. However, rather than use that just as a crutch, and I said, okay, I recognize that this is what I do. Now, how do I make better choices so I can live my possible even better? And pain's a great teacher if we allow it to be. Not that I wake up in the morning saying, oh boy, I hope something screws up today so I can experience some pain. But things are invariably going to be less than. You know how your math teacher taught you less than and greater than, right? I mean, there's going to be some less than experiences in the day. What do I do with those? Do I react or do I respond?
I think you just created a new dance, the less than.
Oh, yeah.
The pop stance.
I don't know. A 63-year-old bald-headed white guy, he may not be the one that makes it on TV with dance moves, but anyway.
Do you want to respond or do you want to react?
No, yeah, really.
Those are great. I mean, are there some specific steps you might have taken as part of that journey? As I think it's wonderful. You took a minute to reflect. You're not being the person not only you want to be or could be, or how you want to teach and reflect in the world. And then you said, oh my God, I got to make this change happen. So how did you make the change happen?
Boy, that's a great question. Old dogs, it's not that old dogs can't learn new tricks. It's that old dogs first have to unlearn the previous trick and then learn the new trick. It's almost like you have to create RAM in your brain, right? William James, the father of modern psychology, was fond of saying that we're bundles of habits. So much.
So true. So true. I love that. Yeah,
it really is. I mean, it's an autonomic response. That becomes a reaction. I don't think when I do something. So being an executive coach and ICF certified and all, they did a great job of training me and teaching me that new awareness is that first step. And then, of course, as a coach, what I'm doing is using powerful questions to help people gain new awareness as we reflect on their experiences, and then aligning action with that new awareness. Because it doesn't count. New awareness doesn't count until you act on it. Or as I'm fond of saying, Darren, learning is better behavior. It's got to drill down into a change in behavior. So what can I do? Well, that awareness extends into how am I acting? How do other people see me acting? Having, and this is back to the transformation from me to we, having a few close friends that I can say, I don't think I was at my best there. What did you see? Or that seemed like a really great experience to me. What did you observe? And so it's a matter of making yourself vulnerable and being authentic with a few close friends who will give you that kind of observation and then collaborate with you around it. I use observation and collaboration instead of feedback, because somebody walks up to me and says, hey, Dr. Joey, can I give you some feedback? Immediately my stomach acid churns, because it's never a good thing when they say, hey, can I give you some feedback? They've got a point to prove or something to drill on in me. But observation and collaboration is more objective. It's less emotionally charged. And so it's easier to hear and to act on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I also appreciate the thought we can learn about anything, or from anything, I should say, from pain, from success, from how people are reacting, maybe people giving us observations, that type of thing. And when you say unlearn and relearn or learn new things, that to me, isn't that the growth mindset definition?
Definitely. So now we're talking fixed versus growth mindset, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely growth mindset.
Yeah. And, I think about what you're doing out in the world. You have, and I want to jump into that in a minute. You have some
Okay.
wonderful things you put out in the world that you're doing. And
Mhm.
I feel like you have like a highest purpose or a highest cause. Do you have a certain word, or do you have a phrase or something that you work with every day? Because I feel like you have that as part of maybe your opening every morning as you wake up with the chickens, as you might say.
Well, I get up before the chickens most morning. At least they haven't crowed yet. I'm sure they're out there. Those are my neighbor's chickens, by the way. I'm still working on my wife to allow me to have chickens. I mean, we've got 22 acres here. There's got to be a little land I can put some chickens on, right? A word. Well, I do choose like a word a year. And that's my personal word for the year. And then I typically choose a song that goes with it. So that guides it. And then my coaching partner, Jane Cresswell, and she connected us with a calligraphy artist, if that makes any sense, the one who does calligraphy, but does an artistic expression of it. And so we get her to do like a 9x12 interpretation of our words each year. And so that's that visual representation, because I'm visual, tactile learner, in addition to, I try to engage all my styles. But anyway, that's just a daily reminder of, hey, here's what you're supposed to be about. So here's what you chose to be about this year.
And what is that word? I know my audience is saying, wait a minute, what's the word? And can we see a picture of that? Can we see the picture? Can we actually put that on the YouTube?
That's in the other office over there. But here in the studio, I do have previous year's words. We have a team word also. My word for this year is steward, both people and other resources as well. Just really, again, maximizing potential. So I want to make sure I'm stewarding the resources around me, human resources as well as other types of resources. And time is certainly a resource, energy, attention. The older I get, the more strategic I am. My priorities become more defined because being pops has certainly bumped up the list greatly. So, when the little girl wants to go with me to feed a horse in the evening, and she wants to take the doctor kit that her mommy and her aunt played with, to listen to the horse's heartbeat and that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're going to take a few minutes and do that. And whatever chapter of a book I'm writing or something can wait a little bit.
And what's the song that goes with it? I'm trying to think of one that connects to the words steward or stewardship.
There's a song called Thank You by Ray Boltz, which is an older song. It's not all the way back to my childhood. I grew up with Motown mostly. Ray Boltz is not Motown. I love Motown, but I love the Eagles too. So it's thank you to all the people in his life that gave and made significant contributions to him. So when I'm listening, and I listen to the song every morning, and so when I'm listening to it, Darren, I am remembering people like Archie Mosley, my high school baseball coach, who invested in me in so many different ways. Charlotte Forrest, my high school geometry teacher, who invested in me in ways outside of class. I'm remembering Ms. Anderson, my 5th grade teacher, who came to me and said, Mr. Faucette, I want you to enter this oratorical contest that the Optimist Club is sponsoring. And I'm like, a what kind of contest? She said, oratorical. What does that mean? And so she said, you give a speech. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I could never do that. Yes, you can, and you will. I've already spoken with your mother. So, so I did, and I won 3rd place my very first year. And I was by far, here I was in 5th grade competing against high school students. So Toastmasters. And so now people pay me more money than some of them should, right? For me to stand on platforms, but I let them to stand on platforms and talk about how you create a work positive culture. So, it's good for me in gratitude to remember, and therefore that gratitude becomes my springboard into serving others, so that I'm a steward of the opportunities that I'm given each day.
Yeah, you're living this out loud by example, living your possible, you're teaching. I think that's the ultimate place for anyone that's listening that when you get to the point where you want to teach this and it's giving out a greater, with a greater purpose, it's giving out better possibilities or love or happiness elsewhere. I think that's the greatest gift. And you're there. I'm proud of you, and I'm honored
Thank you,
to
man.
be talking with you about all of this.
Appreciate you saying that. That's very kind of you. I find that teaching is the best way to learn. Because when I'm teaching, it means I'm digging a little bit deeper into who I am and into source materials around me. I'm accessing more of that. And I mean, there are almost 8 billion people here. I got a lot to learn, man, because every person is unique and there's just a ton to learn from everybody. So anytime I'm meeting someone, that's the question in the forefront of my mind. What can I learn from this person? Because there's something unique about that person.
That's fabulous. And I know you have, this the podcast, Work Positive Nation, and Work Positive. I got this beautiful cup for being a guest. So thank you again for that.
You're welcome.
And as you talk about learning, we talked pre-show a little bit about how much you're learning. You just did a recap of your first season, which I'll put a link out for folks because I think it's fabulous. You outlined some 6, I think it was like 6 themes. Tell us a little bit more. What are you learning from the podcast? Like, what are maybe a sample of some of those themes that you're encountering on what you're learning each show?
I don't have all 6 in my head this morning, but 2 come to mind pretty quickly. One is we have yet to figure out the physicality of work. We're in process on that.
Yep.
That is, do we come into the office a physical space? Everybody come into that again as we did pre-pandemic? Do we allow some people who want to come in and other people to not come in? Do we require people to come in 2 or 3 days? Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, said, if you don't want to come into our offices, you probably aren't going to last very long in Amazon. That's a bit of a paraphrase, but it's kind of the way he said it. Elon Musk said, everybody was working for, now it's X. You're going to have to come in the office. So there's this huge question around what leads to most productivity. But there's an even greater question, at least for me, and that is related to the definition of work. And I literally am excited every day by what we're doing to redefine work. And that's a big, broad context of landscape. My dear friend, Dr. Bob Johansen, is a futurist. He was around when the internet was created, literally. I know you thought Al Gore did it, but it was actually the Department of Defense back in 73, right? The ARPANET, which was a precursor to the internet. So there's distributed networks everywhere around us. And Bob's doing some fascinating work with major household name corporations to develop new campuses that take advantage of what he calls the office verse. That's a combination of metaverse and office. His latest book, Office Shock, is absolutely amazing. I would say it set my hair on fire, but nobody would believe that if they looked at the video or think that it did. And maybe that's what happened. Scorched.
You're the heat miser.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Atomized my hair. But Bob talks about, and I agree with him, augmented intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Because it's really how can we augment ourselves, which we're already doing anyway, by the way. How can we augment ourselves for greater engagement and productivity and things like that? So there's certain things that computers can do better than we humans can. Most of those are repetitive tasks, but there is still the innovation, creativity that even generative AI can't quite get to. So the redefinition of work allows us to capture the human spirit in fulfillment, satisfaction, meaning, purpose, things like that through our work. So I think of it as a great redefinition of work. That's what we're on the cusp of now, and just beginning to understand what that means. But this whole physicality question is one of the big nuts we got to crack if we really want to get to the meat of what's going on in work today. And then the other thing quickly is I am just thankful that we can now have mental health conversations.
Yep.
It comes at a cost though. During the pandemic, we saw antidepressant, anti-anxiety meds and things like that those prescriptions go up 30%, maybe even higher now. I haven't checked in the last 6 months. That's a lot. And so now we're allowing ourselves to have those mental health conversations, which can be something as simple, Darren, as how are you today? So we're moving from an assembly line understanding of work and humans at work to productivity, engagement, alignment of purpose of the company and the individual, those kinds of things. So those are two of the really exciting things. I guess I said three because I worked in augmented intelligence, talking about physicality. Three things that I think is just absolutely fascinating in culture today. And the companies that are attracting top talent, reducing team turnover, and increasing productivity and profits are the ones who are capturing those three conversations and leading out in those areas with their people.
Yeah, that last word, people, that element of humanity, I think you talk about it on the show, and it's kind of important that we're bringing humans in that conversation back into the workplace. Like you said about mental health, we can actually say things and share things maybe we're a little bit more vulnerable about, or maybe we couldn't say in the past, and people are feeling like they can belong as more of themselves, maybe not fully yet more. And there's a term you use, becoming. There's a becoming aspect in the workplace, and a lot of wonderful things. And you have a couple books that I'm pretty aligned with. Certainly one that was a bestseller, which we'll talk about. And you just had one that just came out. So hopefully you'll get 8 billion views and and downloads. Small Hinges, Swing Big Doors. And I have mine on the way. So I'm looking forward to take a read. And I'd love for you to describe what that's all about.
It became a bestseller on launch day.
Congratulations.
Very grateful for that. Well, it's the first book of its type I've written, and that is it's a short book. What I'm discovering is now that I can churn out more books, if they're short books, rather than writing a 240-page book or something like that. I can write a less than 100 pages, and people are really interested in reading that. Small Hinges, Swing Big Doors is rooted in the basic notion that Jim Collins was right. We need big, hairy, audacious goals, and we need BHAGers, right? I mean, you don't need me to tell you Jim Collins was right. Jim Collins is right. However, I'm equally convinced that BHAGers constitute a very small percentage of the population. Those are very special people who are visionaries. All of us can do one thing, or dot. That's the way I like to think about it. So we can do one thing. We can be dotters. So these small hinges that swing these big doors are what constitute that book. They're wrapped around the 5 core practices of a work positive culture. And they are just very practical things that you can do today to move your culture, transform your culture really towards more positive. And as I said, it's written short. So
congratulations.
Kristen did an amazing job with the cover, so I like it.
Yeah, it's the subtitle's 51 Culture Dots that positively connect people and profits.
Yep. Businesses have to stay sustainable in order to take care of people, and our families that work for our companies are dependent on us to keep us a company sustainable. So profits are really important. However, it's not either or. We want to connect people and profits.
Yeah, and I like the order too. People lead to profits, so then we can reinvest back in our people and the assets and the investments or infrastructure we need, so we can continue to deliver the services we committed to, whatever that might be.
Absolutely, well said.
Without people, it's hard to deliver.
Well, it depends on what you're delivering. With automation coming along now, back to the augmented intelligence thing, right? There are certain goods and products that you can deliver. I have a friend in the logistics business, and I mean the pick and pack automation now that they have there. That's how you get that cardboard box on your doorstep the next day, right? Is because of that level of automation. However, the higher level, and this again is redefinition work, the higher level activities that even generative AI can't get close to, at least not right now. The innovation, the creativity, just paradigm shifts, the disruption, if you will. those kinds of things are ours to do as human beings. So
Yeah, creativity. It's fascinating. And some of the research, I think we talked about this on your show. Some of the research points to a small percentage of adults actually show the ability to be creative. Do you remember the answer on that percentage?
I do not.
So certain studies, it's 2% of adults show that they're able to be creative versus the average 5-year-old. It's like 98% show the ability to show creative thinking and skills to resolve the same problem. So think about that. What happens?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the cumulative effect of work as we've defined it previously. We just corral, if you will, the human spirit in such ways as we lose that joie de vivre.
How did that happen?
Well, I don't want to gloss too big over historical trends, and there are many multiple causalities for this. However, I mentioned it earlier. I think we go back to Henry Ford and the assembly line mentality. And again, that's one of the exciting things about the redefinition of work now, because automation and robotics now dominate, for instance, car manufacturing lines, and other manufacturing lines, which really release more of us to live into that creativity. And so we become the designers of the cars, or the designers of the robots, or the designers of the bolt that goes in at just that right place with the greatest tensile strength with the fewest number of turns, those kinds of things. So the higher level thinking we can do. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it became formalized at that point with the assembly line. But prior to that, there were historical trends in play already that were suggesting that we could use people to do repetitive tasks and stifle the creativity right out of them.
Yeah. We're not as motivated, and that's kind of taking its path and course over time in different jobs. I think, it's to your point about saying hello again as a leader, it's saying hello and actually listening to what someone says. Because sometimes I've seen it, I've done it myself, being from the Northeast. Hey, how are you? And you keep walking.
Yeah, it's a greeting as opposed to an inquisitive, curious nature, right? Mm-hmm.
So talk about a habit. That's a bad habit. So no, I'm really not listening.
Yeah,
No?
let's say they're more effective habits than that one.
Because you have another best-selling book, Work Positive in a Negative World. Are there some suggestions in that book that you could help us think about to help us work positive in a negative world?
Yeah, and that book that came out most recently in 2020 was the team edition, because the first edition of that, which came out in 11, which really came out of the research I did in the Great Recession, since I didn't have anywhere to go and any work to do. And when your wife looks at you, Darren, and says, "Isn't it time for you to travel?" She's concerned about the revenue for the family, or she's tired of looking at you. Or a combination of both, I guess. Yeah, there's lots of suggestions. In fact, I'll just very quickly go over the 5 sets of habits that I like to call core practices. The first is perceive. And that's the mental dynamic, and goes back to what we were talking about earlier, training your brain to focus on the positive and filter out the negative. It's not some Pollyanna, there's nothing negative. Oh, we just need to stay positive. No, it's not that at all. It's far beyond positive thinking. And now Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's book from 1952 was highly influential on me, as was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. However, it's focusing on the positive while recognizing the negative, while seeing it, but you filter it out.
Great.
Second thing is a conceive core practice. This is the social dynamic of relationships. So there are very specific tactics in there for how to deal with negative people without becoming one yourself. I like to call negative people as a class your vampires. I specifically talk about managers who are Kevins, right? And the creation of Kevin culture in most businesses. And that was why the Great Resignation was followed by the Great Regret, because we discovered that Kevin's everywhere. He's in every culture. So what are the 5 key characteristics of work positive dream teams? How do we develop those in our people? So you perceive it mentally, you conceive it socially, and thirdly, you believe it emotionally. And this is the place where engagement, you give serious attention to engagement. Gallup found in their last poll that 85% of American workers say they're disengaged at work. Number was up a little bit. Well, upright much, in fact, from about 72, 73% to 85 during the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see what happens post-pandemic in the next survey they do. But once we engage, then the innovation and creativity, the kinds of things we were talking about a moment ago, really come to bear. And we belong and become because we're connecting our daily task with the company mission, and we see ourselves as a part of a larger whole and making a contribution. The fourth thing is we achieve it, and this is the physicality of it. These are the things that we do. So our productivity increases because we're focusing on the positive, filtering out the negative. We're focusing on positive people and choosing to spend less time with the Eeyore vampires. And we also are engaged with our work. So it naturally follows then, because motivation is an inside job and learning is better behavior, our actions are more guided, they're more strategic as well as tactical towards getting results, as my friend Jody Thompson likes to talk about. And then fifthly, receive is the fifth core practice. Now, when I did my study of guys and gals I call Great Depression gurus, I thought the achieve core practice was the last one. I mean, you perceive it, conceive it, believe it, and achieve it. What else is there, right? You hit your goals, results are outstanding. But that fifth dimension really is what accelerates the continuation of the five core practices. And that is, I'm expressing gratitude. I'm becoming aware of my own gratitude. I'm expressing that in service to others. And so service then is motivated by gratitude for recognition that I have achieved because I believed and conceived and perceived. So I discovered great ways of saying thank you to Darren. That's why you got what my granddaughter calls a birthday cup for being on my show, because I wanted to say thank you. Right, exactly. Because I wanted to say thank you to you and let you know how special that was for me to have you on the Work Positive podcast. So it's things like that in service to others and expressing gratitude that really keeps those five core practices going. And so that book is full of all kinds of strategies. It's really my manifesto about the Work Positive framework. We've got courses online at workpositive.today, like 7 Keys to Work Positive, that coaching program, and others that drive you deeper into tactics that you can begin implementing today in your work culture.
Thank you for sharing all that. That's so insightful. And I love, I love the nature of how it's continuous. It's not like this is, you go through the experiences and you're done, right? It's going to be an ongoing learning loop. And I think you're giving the tools for us to practice every day.
Exactly. And practice is the right word. There's always room for growth and improvement. And it's personal and professional. So I just like to call it development. Yeah, it does continue, not just for our own benefit, but as we've made that transformation from me to we, for our team, the company, our community, and eventually the world.
You have such a nice way about you, Dr. Joey, or Pops. You know, I'm just curious too, going back to your childhood. I mean, are there certain stories or memories that maybe kind of shaped you for who you are, that you reflect back to? You're so positive, you're so grateful and appreciative, so always smiling, always learning. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we were like when we were kids, right? We're always learning.
Yeah, I'm just a big kid. My wife would tell you that I'm stuck at 17. So, I'm not sure she means that as a compliment some days.
Well, that means you're always curious. You're always kind of looking the world out in a different way.
Just filled with awe and wonder. And
yes,
that regenerates me daily. But in terms of those transforming experiences that I had when I was a kid, yeah, there were a bunch. One in particular was when I was about 9 years old. I did what I thought every 9-year-old wanted to do, and that is go make money, right? So you're not dependent on your parents for an allowance. Maybe not so now, but anyway. So I borrowed a lawnmower and went and mowed a lawn. Quickly discovered that I'm allergic to grass, and especially mown grass, so much so that I came down with a viral infection in my lungs, and was in Duke University Medical Center for about a week. Really, really sick. And I can remember being under, now they don't use these, I don't think, but it was a mist tent. So they were misting through O2 in the air some medicine into this tent. And What we didn't know is I was allergic to that medicine too, but I was coughing, and my O2 levels were way down, and my skin tone was turning green and then blue. So my mom got the doctor in there. Unfortunately, the doctor wasn't on call, but the internist was. And so I remember the internist saying, just pray he makes it through the night. And yeah. And
Oh my God.
yeah. So, I'm 9 years old and I'm hearing that. And I'm, of course, scared to death, coughing my lungs out. And I look at mom and she reaches under the mist tent and takes my little hand and says, Joey, I'm positive you're going to make it through the night.
Wow.
And she spoke that truth into me. And I believed it because she's my mom. She knows everything, right? At that point in my life, she was still making everything better. So I made it through the night. And fortunately, the doctor came around the next morning, Dr. Susan Dees, who at that time was the foremost asthma allergist, pediatric asthma allergy specialist in the world. So you see the resources that came to me there. And she said, get him out of that tent. He's allergic to the medicine. Why didn't you think of that? I remember that. And so I came back home. I got well, came back home, knew I still had this entrepreneurial spirit and knew I wasn't going to be able to mow grass. So about that time, there arrived in my mail a big manila envelope, like 9x12, from the Sales Leadership Club. And now this was 100 years ago when I was 9 years old, right? So you could then sell and therefore buy inscribed Christmas cards. And back then, everybody went to the painstaking trouble of writing their names in Christmas cards, right? But this nouveau technology, I could actually write your name down on a form, send it into the company, and they would send you a box of Christmas cards with your name inscribed on it. Big deal back then. So I said, hey, I can do this. I don't think I'm allergic to Christmas cards. So here I am going door to door in August. It's 100 degrees in Eastern North Carolina, 100% humidity. And I'm showing people Christmas cards with, Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph, and Baby Jesus on them, snow scenes, and saying, hey, how many Christmas cards do you want? Well, I was a cute 9-year-old kid. So anyway, I got enough credits and money built up to get a 3-speed bike, which was the latest technology. Cassette decks had just come out then, so I got a new cassette recorder. And I got a telescope. I just gave that telescope to Goodwill a few years back because I could see the moon. I could see all these great, I could see the heavens. So from that experience, man, I learned so much, perseverance through adversity. In fact, that really set up my high performance pattern. Our company uses a narrative approach to helping people discover their high performance patterns. And so that's one of my pivotal stories, my transforming experiences where, I respond to adversity by perseverance and finding the opportunity in it. So anyway, yeah, that's one of the things that formed me and shaped me.
Thanks for sharing this. It's a beautiful story. Your mom, setting that direction to you, she believes. You believed it.
And the cool thing, Darren, is mom is, as of this recording, she's 83. I'll be with her this weekend. She has cancer. She's taking another treatment today. She and my dad both have cancer, in fact. And so the roles have been reversed somewhat now. And so I find myself with the incredible opportunity to repay some of that debt that she spoke that truth in my life. So now it's my turn to speak that truth and try to provide for her what she needs as she enters the sunset years of her life.
Yeah, help her believe, get her mindset there, and give her a big hug for us, and our thoughts with all of you. That's
thanks, buddy. I appreciate that, man. It's a privilege. I mean, it stretches me, because your pop's over here, and then your medical POA to your parents over here, and oh, by the way, you're running a business in the off hours,
right? Right. It is, to that point too. You are an entrepreneur. I feel like you have this radio voice. Have you been on the radio before?
I expected you to say I have a face for radio.
Yeah, you said your whole life you've been. You got your portrait behind you. It looks like like.
Yeah. That reminds me of that 9-year-old kid,
handsome.
right?
Very handsome, Dr. Joey Pops.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. That's just a funny joke that us guys in radio tell, or former radio guys. But yeah, that was another adversity back in the mid '70s. So the company my dad worked for went bankrupt, and I found myself as a 16-year-old staring down college costs in a couple of years. With a dad who was out of work, and the economy certainly wasn't supporting a whole lot of economic growth at that time. So I just said, okay, what's something that I'm doing what's an asset that I have? Again, responding to the adversity, looking for the opportunity. That's my peak performance, my high performance pattern. So the adversity was obviously, I want to go to college, and dad's out of work. Mom did not work at that time outside the home. So what asset do I have? And I had spoken to groups, as I mentioned earlier, because Ms. Anderson prompted me to. I also had narrated some musicals and things like that. People seemed to respond to my voice well. So I went to see Bob Harper, who owned a local AM/FM radio station. Joey, do you have any experience? Well, narrated these musicals, but I've never been on the radio, which, I don't know, friends of mine have told me, and entrepreneurial groups I've been in, they've said, you're just fearless. And I'm like, no, probably just don't have enough sense to know to be scared.
That's a skill.
I just rush in where angels fear to tread. And so 2 hours later, I had a job at Bob Harper's radio stations. And 6 months later, I had the #1 rated afternoon drive show in northeastern North Carolina. I would get out of school and go to the radio station and do drive time. So
fabulous. Congratulations. Yeah. What about it made it #1?
The number of people listening. Yeah.
What made it exciting for them to listen?
Well, first of all, I was very coachable. And secondly, Bob was a great coach. I knew I didn't know what I was doing. By the way, that's something that's lost today, is the ability to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know, and to learn something, because that admission creates reciprocity with other people and releases them to say, I don't know either, but we can go figure it out. So I knew I didn't know. Therefore I was coachable. Secondly, Bob was a great coach. And thirdly, country music was evolving at that time beyond what it always had been. So Urban Cowboy came out, or we led up to Urban Cowboy at that point in time. So I was country before country was cool, Barbara Mandrell and myself. So anyway, yeah, we just had a ton of people listening, and they turned on.
That's great. Do you remember the first song you played?
Oh, wow. Good question. I do not. I can name you some of the songs. Outlaw country music was big then. So Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, who's, what is he, about 90 now or something?
He's still playing too, which is unbelievable.
He is. I interviewed Jamie Weeks for the Work Positive podcast. Jamie is an incredible entrepreneur, really focuses on empathy in creating a positive work culture. And so when he's interviewing people, he asks them 3 questions. 1, what was your first car? 2, what was your first concert? And 3rd, what movie can you watch over and over and over? So that first concert for me was Willie Nelson. I managed to go see Willie Nelson. So
that's cool. I love that question.
Those 3 questions are powerful in the interview process. Yeah. My first car, by the way, was a 1979 Toyota Corolla 5-speed. Yeah. I think it had an AM radio.
Nice. That's good to learn on the stick too. Yeah. My first concert was Kiss, full makeup.
Wow.
Love that. Yeah,
Gene Simmons would be proud. They were excellent marketers, much better, kind of like Jimmy Buffett, much better marketers than they were musicians, but we all love their music.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. God bless Jimmy Buffett too. And for what you're up to these days, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of fun what you're doing. And what do you do outside of all the work positive work and your coaching, your writing? What else are you doing for fun?
Yeah, creating courses. Again, that transformation from me to we has put me in touch with so many incredible people, particularly guests on the Work Positive podcast. So we're creating courses, video-based courses that we put online on our website at workpositive.today. And so I I have conversations with people about various things. I was talking about Bob Johansson earlier. He's one. So just putting those courses together, that's a lot of fun. But I mean, work for me is fun because I choose fun work that suits me. If you're talking about outside of work positive, we live on this little 22-acre farm, and we've been here. This is year 25, and so I just still have a lot of plans for doing things. We've got some woodlands that we're gonna harvest and then replant back, and I'm working with some local government and state-sponsored officials to figure out how to create an environment that's best suited to the native habitat of deer and turkey and things like that around here, and how we can create really a regenerative agriculture around here for them. So that's a lot of fun. I've got an area planned for orchards, hope to build a pond also to provide water for the wildlife. And I have a tractor and know how to use it. So that's a lot of fun. Also, I hope to get back into horses as a little girl gets a little older. I'm hoping her mom and dad will let me buy her a horse, so or at least a pony.
I love it. I love it. And you're proud pops, as you started the show with. It's that's fascinating. I'm excited for you. It's wonderful to me. You're like a candle. You bring warmth and light to all of us. So thank you for everything you're doing. And any final words you'd like to share with our audience about anything that might inspire them to take a positive action today?
Yeah. Hey guys, if I can do it, you can do it. All right. Please avoid that mentality of saying, well, that's Dr. Joey. You can do it too. I promise you can. Darren's great book will help guide you through some tactics that you can pick up today and start doing. So just live your possible today. Throttle back on thinking, well, I can't do that for 10 years or 5 years or 10 months or 10 days. Just do it today and really focus on doing that one thing today that's going to move the needle as you transform from me to we, and just living that life that's your best possible life out of gratitude. You got this. You can do this.
Dr. Joey, this has been fabulous. Thank you for joining us today, my friend. I'm honored to know you and blessed to be part of your world. So thank you for joining.
Darren, the pleasure's been all mine, man. Thanks. This has been a fun conversation. I've enjoyed every second of it. Thank you, my friend.
We'll be in touch soon. Take care.
You too.
Check out his Work Positive podcast and listen to his recap of season 1, where he outlines 6 fascinating themes that he began to share with us on the show. And pick up his new book, Small Hinges Swing Big Doors. It looks like a quick, fun, and practical read that will help us positively connect people and profits in the workplace. My copy is on the way. I'm excited to check it out. I also love his routine to identify a word of the year, and I've never thought about adding a song to listen to each day to get us going. Consider this today, or at least start the year right in 2024. Count me in, Dr. Joey. Lastly, imagine waking up each day and asking yourself questions to get what really matters on top of your mind. Pops does this every day to orient his mindset and his actions to align with what he is grateful for. The approach works, as these things will show up in your day and give you positive pause as you experience life, and it will slow you down to live the life that you want. As Dr. Joey says, you can do this too. You are possible. Take the steps and create the habits that make you the star of your movie and live your possible.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.